So today we're going to be making vegan pancakes. It's a pretty simple recipe. You want to start by mixing your dry ingredients together in a separate bowl. So we have 1 cup of flour here, and to that we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Now you want to make sure you have fresh baking powder. If your baking powder is more than 6 months old or so, I would suggest getting new baking powder. If it's old, it won't rise as well, and your pancakes will turn out. And this is 1/2 teaspoons of the powdered part of Energy Egg Replacer. Now that's 1 egg worth of Energy Egg Replacer. And Energy Egg Replacer is a powdered box mix. It's mostly tapioca starch and potato flour. A box like this replaces 113 chicken eggs and costs about $6. Whole Foods all across the country carries it. A lot of natural food stores and co-ops will carry it. A regular store like Safeway, Kroger, Publix may not carry it. So if they don't, ask them to carry it. If they see there's a demand for vegan products such as this, hopefully they'll start carrying it and you'll be able to purchase it, and other people will too. It's about 3 cents per egg is what I figured out, and it's about half the cost of a chicken egg. And of course there's no cruelty and no cholesterol involved either, which is great. So once we have our dry ingredients in our separate bowl, we just want to mix them up a little bit. They don't have to be mixed too thoroughly. Just want to make sure that you don't get any clumps or anything in there. And set that aside. And then you get your big bowl, which is going to be the bowl that your batter is in. And you want to start by adding your 1 cup of soy milk. And then you're going to add 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. And you want to make sure that you only use like soybean oil or canola oil. You don't want to use peanut or sesame or olive oil, any oils that have flavors like that. You don't want to use that. You just want to use generic vegetable oil. And then you want to add your 2 tablespoons of water. Now this is the other part of the Energy Egg Replacer recipe for making or replacing 1 egg. And on the box it actually has the instructions. So if you get the Energy brand Egg Replacer, on the side of the box it tells you how to make the eggs. Keep in mind that this doesn't work for like scrambled eggs. It only works as a binding and leavening agent in baking. But it works great in baking. One thing that I want to suggest is that it tells you to make the egg replacement by mixing the water and the energy powder together, but I would not do that. I would put the powder in with your dry ingredients and the water in with your wet ingredients, such as I just did, and that way you don't get any clumping of your Energy Egg Replacer. And then you want to add your sugar, and a lot of people don't know that sugar is actually considered a wet ingredient, and that's because when you put the sugar in with the other wet ingredients, it will melt. So you always want to put in your sugar with all of your wet ingredients. And then using a whisk like this, you can use a fork if you have a fork, if you only have a fork, but these kind of whisks are ideal. Just whisk it together just a little bit, just to get your sugar melted and mixed in there. And then the dry ingredients that we mixed together earlier, we're just going to dump all of those in with the wet ingredients. And this is where the whisk really comes in handy. You can do it with a fork, like I said, but the whisk really helps a lot. I start by slowly whisking it just so I don't get that powder flying everywhere. And once it starts to thicken up, then you can really start to whisk it. And you want to make sure to scrape the sides a little bit so you don't get those clumps on the sides. And anybody who's an experienced baker kind of can figure all this part out. But if you're new to cooking, new to baking, it's a good tip. And you just want to whisk it pretty vigorously until you get all the clumps out, until you get a nice, smooth pancake batter. Just like that. The final step, and you could have done this when you were doing your wet ingredients, but I don't know, it doesn't really matter. But you want to add a teaspoon of vanilla. I didn't pre-measure the vanilla because this is artificial vanilla extract, which is mostly alcohol, and I didn't want it to all evaporate. And not part of the basic recipe, but something that I consider part of any good pancake recipe is a little bit of almond extract. And I'm not exacting, I usually just use about a half a capful. It's really powerful, so you don't want to use too much. But I love almond flavor in pancakes. Another thing that I do is I'll add like orange or lemon flavor into my pancakes in addition to the almond. And orange especially makes really good flavored pancakes. So I just want to mix that in, and you're pretty much ready to go. Okay, step 2 is actually cooking your pancakes. We have our batter that we just made, and we have a nice, good size serving spoon. And we have a preheated nonstick skillet. We have the heat at about medium, a little bit above medium, depending on what kind of pan or skillet you're using and what kind of stove you have, how old it is or how new it is. You're going to need to adjust your temperature, but it's good to start right at about medium. And you want to make sure that you preheat your pan or your skillet. If you don't, your first pancakes aren't going to come out very good, or they're going to take a long time to cook and you're not going to get them cooked very evenly. So we've had this sitting about 5 minutes on the heat, so you get a nice hot pan. And then we just want to scoop the batter on. It's pretty simple. You'll hear a frying sound when it hits. If you don't hear that, you probably have your temperature too low. Of course, if you get a bunch of smoke when you first put it on it, then you got it way too high. But if you set it at medium, it's pretty hard to screw up. And I've used this recipe for little small dollar pancakes, really big full skillet pancakes, and it's worked pretty well for everything. One thing that's super important, in my opinion, is to have a nice big round spatula. If you have one of those, like the standard size one, what's going to happen is your pancakes are going to fall over the side and it's going to be a real big mess. It's about $2 at a drugstore for a cheap Echo spatula like this, so I would definitely invest in that. As you can see, we're starting to get bubbles around the edges and some bubbles in the middle. That means our pancakes are about ready to flip. Usually what I do is I just stick the edge of the spatula under, and if it lifts up pretty easily, then I know I'm about ready to flip them. It's not too bad, a little bit burned, but usually you're not talking at the same time. Well, it's just about perfect. Second side usually cooks a little bit faster. So once it's sat on there for a while and the first side's cooked, it's cooked partway through, so the second side's a little bit quicker, usually 30 to 45 seconds on the back side, depending on how hot your stove is and how hot you have your heat set, what temperature it is. Second side you can, that's perfect. You can actually lift up and check, and if it's not done, you can always flip it back over. You don't want to do that on the first side because you have wet batter on the top and it'll run off, but on the second side, it's a lot easier to get it right because you can just lift it up and check it. And it's not bad. There we go. Fresh vegan pancakes. That's how it's done.